So, I've often said to people that, some of the biggest successes, in quotes, the Chinese Communist Party has had is in its propaganda efforts and the United Front work and so forth.
Right.
Convincing people that it's, big and important and powerful and economically bigger. And what you're describing here, I find very chilling because, in this sort of system, could the CCP just basically, cut off certain data flows, at the drop of a hat, whether it's information, whether it's, the control over a driverless car? Is it that simple in a world where China controls 5G?
So if you look at what happened in Germany, for example, the far-right party in Germany was able to harness Facebook to do advertising to, essentially get far more votes than they'd ever got in the history since the fall of the Nazi regime. And so the way that you harness big data, social media, artificial intelligence, and you can do this all through a 5G network, and especially if you own the infrastructure and the devices, now you have enormous opportunity to both have a fine level of detail. Your digital persona gives incredible insight to who you are as a person, what your interests are, what your motivations are, and in that, using that information with a purpose in mind, Amazon sales are going up, Facebook connections are going up, but in China, they're able to influence you in ways that actually leads to an outcome that's good for the state.
So it's basically this, insanely in-depth research that Facebook would have or Google has on any one of us for using the internet, but basically weaponized by a totalitarian regime for its use.
Right. If you think about it, GDPR is almost a swan song of liberal democracies because it was going after the FANGs: Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Right. The ability to actually prevent them from taking your data. What's coming up behind the FANGs? The BATs, the Baidus, the Alibabas, the Tencents. Now you can actually find Google and get a payment. That's possible because they are in a country that abides by rule of law.
Follows the rules,
right?
Exactly, right.
You can't find the BATs and get a payment because they live in a country, they exist in a country that doesn't follow rule of law. They follow rule by law. If you've seen any of the lawsuits that have gone against Chinese companies in the United States, they never collect. They're either settled out of court, or the plaintiff actually runs out of money trying to sue them because they actually have access to state coffers. So good luck for Europe ever getting any of the BATs to abide by GDPR. And more worrisome is if China has their 5G network, then it doesn't matter what GDPR says because they're going to have the back doors to do whatever they want with that data.
Fascinating. So, the Trump administration recently banned Huawei, biggest telecom company in the world. What's the relationship between Huawei and the Communist Party of China?
Well, it's the same relationship that any other company has that's from China, and that is the Chinese Communist Party has total control over the country, which means they have total control of the company.
So you don't believe the leaders saying, hey, they can't tell me what to do?
Yeah, Ren Zhengfei, I actually find it laughable when the head of Interpol can basically be sequestered without anybody knowing. Interpol has no idea. The entire international community is completely oblivious to what happened to the head of Interpol. Guess what? He got anti-corrupted. Do you think Ren Zhengfei can't be anti-corrupted, or anybody in China can't be essentially sequestered in a non-judicial way? Of course, that's their system. The sovereign in China is not the Chinese government. The People's Republic of China government is not the sovereign. The sovereign is the Chinese Communist Party. It's a challenge for countries to actually do business, diplomatic business with China, because the decisions are actually made by the Communist Party. They are not made by the government. The government executes the decisions of the Chinese Communist Party. And so when the State Department goes over to meet with their counterparts in China, they're not actually meeting with the sovereign. Think about that. The sovereign here in the United States would be represented by the State Department.
Right.
But in China, that's not the case. It's actually represented by the Communist Party. And the Communist Party has its own constitution. And that constitution says the most important thing for the Communist Party is maintaining control of the Communist Party.